chair.
Good morning.
Welcome to this fifth in the summer speaker series here at Fountain Street Church. I'm the Reverend Jody Betten, the Interim Consulting Minister, and I'm honored to be here with you today. Our guest speaker this morning is Cindy Kamp, who I'm lucky to call a friend. Go back a ways. Cindy is adjunct professor of religious and global studies and has a graduate degree from Harvard Divinity School. She's worked in the Illinois Governor's Office on Capitol Hill and at the State Department. Currently, she has a day job in the corporate world. She's creator and host of two podcasts, Your True North and Generation Swap. Cindy is married and the mother of two high school-age sons. She lives just outside Grand Rapids, where she enjoys watching birds, frogs. I wondered if it was watching frogs or if you enjoy frogs. A little of both, huh? Yeah. All right. And an energetic blue healer. So thanks for being with us this morning. And as you can see from the screen, it's going to be a lovely and interesting talk. So I want you to know a couple things that have changed. We now have Sunday office hours. So from 9 till noon on Sundays, Lori will be here, although next Sunday she will not. So there you go. But moving forward, that's the plan, so that you all, if you have questions and you're not able to get here during the week, Lori will be available to help with those sorts of things. Grateful this morning to Cal and Margi and all those in the background, especially Carol, who puts the program and everything all together in the Religious Services Committee. It's really wonderful to be part of this. Our invitation to worship this morning comes from Dorothy Day. Dorothy Day wrote, "We have all known the long loneliness, and we have learned that the only solution is love, and that love comes with community." It's why we're here together, right? Because of the love we find in community.
If you open your hymnals to the first hymn, 180, the word might look strange to you. It's Alhamdulillah. And that's all we sing over and over again, Alhamdulillah. When I go back to the piano, I'm going to play it through once, and then we're all going to sing it through together once. And then I have two groups of choir people who are going to do the parts. So the congregation will sing it through 3 times, okay? And at some point, we'll all kind of wrap it up together. I hope.
Well, which side sings which?
Oh, you guys go start on 2. You guys start on 3. All right, got it.
Good morning, everyone. I want to say a thank you to each of you for being here today. And just a couple of other thank yous, especially Carol Koistra, who has been so supportive of my interest in doing this talk with you. I also want to thank Margi, Peterson, Chaplain Peterson, and the members of the Fountain Street Choir for the music, Reverend Jody Betten for joining me here. Also, thank you to my family. Some of them are here today. They were really great sports about my taking a trip to northern Pakistan for 3.5 weeks. It's a long time to be gone. And then finally, I want to thank, and you'll get to know her as I talk in a few minutes, but my dear friend, Dr. Samina Khatak, and her husband, Javed Khatak, and sister, Dr. Hasina Javed. They live in the Chicago area. They would have liked to have been here today, but I've known them for 20 years, and their family, the Niaz family, hosted me when I visited Pakistan. And so a big heartfelt thanks to them. I'm going to be reading from a book called The Invention of Yesterday by Tamim Ansary. He's a journalist and historian, Afghani-American, and he writes, "We may never have a world we all share peacefully, but we won't ever have it if we don't build it. The goal is not for all of us to become just the same, nor to educate them so they can join with us, nor to become just like them so we can join their world. The goal is for all of us to find our way around the world with the same map. Only then will all discussions make sense. Only then will all conversations become possible. Making connections across cultural borders requires that we take context seriously. It's the only way to glimpse a universe of meaning that we might build with people very different from ourselves. And it isn't enough to include them in one's own picture as supporting cast. The challenge has always been to get at least an inkling of a perspective other than our own. It takes a lot of intellectual craning and neck stretching to picture the world from another center. But there's no other way to build a world community in which everybody is us and nobody is them."
I like to think great minds. Our context this morning is being created by Asian Americans. So I'm going to reflect for just a few minutes on the work of Valerie Kaur. You may know her from the book See No Stranger. Valerie was in college when 9/11 happened, and immediately after 9/11, in the month following, there were 300 attacks on Sikhs. They were targeted because they wear turbans, and people assumed wrongly, of course, that they may have been terrorists then or part of the terrorist plot. So Valerie began a video documentary, talking with the folks who were victims of those hate crimes. And her story is told in the See No Stranger book. The premise of her book is that you are part of me I do not yet know. You are part of me I do not yet know. And to the point of your reader, what if we moved in that direction in every relationship? Because while I know you a little bit, there's so much I don't know about you. She writes this: "What has been an ancient spiritual truth is now increasingly verified by science. We are all indivisibly part of one another. We share a common ancestry with everyone and everything alive on earth. The air we breathe contains atoms that have passed through the lungs of ancestors long dead. Our bodies are composed of the same elements, created deep inside the furnaces of long dead stars. We can look upon the face of anyone or anything around us and say, as a moral declaration and a spiritual, cosmological, and biological fact, you are part of me I do not yet know." I wonder if for our prayer this morning, you would say that with me. I'll say it, join in if you think you know, and then the second time we'll say it all together. You are part of me I do not yet know. You are part of me I do not yet know. Amen. Our offering is being taken at this time, and just so those of you who don't know are aware, half of our offering that's taken goes to local charities through our social justice team. The rest of it is used to, as they say, keep the lights on. So if you're a guest among us, we don't expect you to give at this time. For the rest of you, give generously.
Good morning. I realize in giving some words of thanks, I failed to mention Cal Clements, who helped me with the IT for this, and he encouraged me to use Google Slides, which is new for me. I typically use PowerPoint. That meant I had to take one of my boys' computers this morning and discovered there were some bad words on the computer, so that's why there's some paper and some duct tape on the front of the computer. As you can see, I've titled this talk, Journey to Pakistan, Lessons in Hospitality, Humility, and Compassion. And I'm going to talk in the kind of end of the lecture, the discussion, about a trip I made. But this talk is really about a 20-year relationship that I've had with Dr. Samina Khattak, a good friend of mine. I think what may be helpful is to give you a little idea of where I'm going with the discussion. I want to just put these things out there. These are some of the things that I have learned as a result of my relationship with her. One is that hospitality is a wonderful gateway to building connection and relationship with other people. I think it's important that we recognize that there are real differences between cultures, things like our morals and values, economic realities, the role of religion, family structure. But I think we also want to humbly recognize that there are powerful similarities that bind us to each other. Things like fear of the unknown and suspicion of outsiders, a commitment to education, and a love for our children. And then I have this word zakat here. Some of you, if you are familiar with the Muslim religion, Islam, know that zakat is one of the 5 pillars of Islam. And I've seen Samina and her family practice zakat or charitable actions, charitable donations over and over again. And I think that zakat really for me is the face of compassion when I think about her and her family. So just a little bit of a prologue, and then my talk will cover 3 acts. The prologue is just a little bit about my background. I grew up on the south side of Chicago in a very sheltered, safe community, a Dutch Christian Reformed community there. This is my kindergarten class. You'll see there's not a lot of diversity. I went to Christian schools from the time I was in preschool all the way through my years at Calvin College. And I think the diversity that I experienced as a child, well, we did live in an Irish Catholic neighborhood, so there was a little bit of difference there. And then, and my father, I think with all good intentions, but when we would go downtown Chicago, if you know the South Side, 95th Street is kind of a major artery, and we would take 95th Street to get to the Dan Ryan. And we'd hit a certain point on the drive, maybe it would be Western Avenue or it would be Damon, and my dad would say, "Lock the doors." And it sent this message that people who look different from us are potentially kind of dangerous. So that was one early message. And then the other thing, our church supported people working in Nigeria, missionaries. And I didn't know much about Nigeria, but what I took away from that was that these were people in need of saving. They needed our religion. And so those were my earliest experiences. Then in college, and actually at the end of high school, I took a trip to Europe, and that was a wonderful experience. I got to see a little bit of the world from a different point of view. In college, I discovered that I had a passion for foreign affairs. This is a picture of me. I spent a summer in Jordan working on an archaeological dig there. I spent 8 hours a day in a small area working with 2 Bedouin men, them speaking only Arabic, me speaking only English, so it was an interesting experience. But in even more than international affairs, other religions and other cultures became a consuming interest for me. So Act 1 of my story is meeting Samina. And this is Dr. Samina Katak. She's a psychiatrist and works in the public health system in Chicago. She and I met, as I said, 20 years ago. We were at a work luncheon together and started to talk about our lives. And her story to me was so fascinating. She grew up in Pakistan, but had lived for some years in the US. And her family, and this is a picture of them. Samina is on the far right as a teenager. She grew up on the campus of Islamia College in Peshawar, Pakistan. She's pictured here with her sister, her 2 brothers, and her parents. Her father was a linguistics professor there, and he actually got a graduate degree at the University of Michigan as a young man. So they have kind of a deep connection to Michigan, which is lovely. But he really promoted education for his children. He really wanted the girls to be doctors, and he wanted the boys to pursue either medicine or engineering. And so 3 of them, both the girls and her brother Kazim, are doctors. Her brother Mervez is an engineer. But a family of high educational attainment and just broad cultural interest in many things in the world. And then I learned that Samina's great uncle was this man, Ghaffar Khan, often called Badshah Khan, or the Frontier Gandhi is a nickname that some people may know him by. He was Samina's father's uncle, and when Samina's father was a teenager, he spent time in prison for acts of civil disobedience against the British government. They were working to promote self-rule, and Ghaffar Khan and Gandhi were friends and allies. What's so intriguing to me is, although Gandhi was Hindu and Ghaffar Khan Muslim, they viewed those differences as a source of strength. I think of the choir. I think if we were all tenors, it wouldn't be nearly as beautiful as the fact that we all have different voices that contribute different pitches. And so these 2 men work closely together, along with many other reasons. The British did finally leave the Asian subcontinent. Like Gandhi, Ghaffar Khan spent a lot of time in prison. He lived to be 90 and spent about 30 years of his life in jail. So a man of deep, deep principles. And he was also a firm believer in education. So Samina and her father come by this legacy of commitment to education very honestly through their great uncle. In 2013, I was doing some adjunct teaching in Chicago at St. Xavier University. Samina's father, Dr. Jahanzeb Niaz, and her mother were visiting, and we learned that Rajmohan Gandhi, Gandhi's oldest grandson, was teaching nearby at the University of Illinois. The families still had some connection with each other, and so I was able to host a panel discussion where they came and talked about nonviolent civil disobedience and religious tolerance, and we had some students there, we had some faculty, members of the community. It was a really wonderful experience. So you see here Samina's father has the hat on, and Rajmohan Gandhi is seated in the center in the table, and then Samina and a couple of her siblings. So I've had a long-term connection and really just admire this family and what they stand for. A little interlude, and I think this may be helpful. I have a map here of Pakistan. You see Islamabad, the capital, in bold print there toward the north. And just across, if you go west, is the city of Peshawar. And that's the city where I spent most of the time when I was visiting. Pakistan is an interesting country. It's a young country, just celebrated its 75th anniversary. And it's a large country. There are almost 250 million people there, and very young. 2/3 of the population nearly is under the age of 30. So it's a very, very young population. The overall literacy rate is 72%. 81% of men are literate and 55% of women. Many challenges face Pakistan. If you follow the news, I think you know that there's been a lot of political turmoil recently, some real economic hardships, but perhaps the greatest challenge facing Pakistan is ecological. Last summer they had terrible floods there, and they're worried about how the rain will fall this year, whether they will once again have people forced from their homes and farmland destroyed. They also face drought at other times of the year and deforestation. There's a lot of things that Pakistan has to face. I am grateful to Reverend Betten for mentioning September 11. I thought it was important to include this too. So the deaths on September 11, 2001 here in the US were 2,996. And then I did a little bit of research. Brown University has the Costs of War project. And deaths from US wars in Iraq, Syria, Somalia, Pakistan, and Afghanistan since 2001 are estimated to be over 900,000, of whom approximately 387,000 were civilians. The financial cost of the war, over $8 trillion. The human and moral cost, incalculable. Act 2 is a little story I want to tell about a school in Pakistan called Sabawoon. In the Pashto language, which is the language that Samina and her family and those in northern Pakistan and many in Afghanistan speak, Sabawoon means the dawn. Many children in Pakistan do not get to go to school. There just aren't enough schools. There isn't enough money devoted to education for all children to get an education. And so because of this principle of zakat, because of family history and commitment to education, the example of her great uncle, the frontier Gandhi, Samina's family and friends started a school for local children in Peshawar around a little over 20 years ago. The reality for many of these children is that at age 7, 8, or 9, they go to work. They don't ever go to school. And they may work in markets, or they may work as domestic servants or in brick kilns. Life is very hard for children there. And so the idea of starting a school, they were negotiating with local families, saying, would you allow your children to go to school for half the day? They can still work later in the day. We realize this means less income for your family, but it will improve their long-term job prospects so much. And so some families agreed that they would let their children go to school. When I heard about this, I thought, what an excellent opportunity for my boys at the time were in elementary school, for our school to partner with Sabawoon and to have a sister school project. This is a picture of, I think, Brendan's kindergarten class. And the mutual benefit in my mind was that the children at Southwest were going to be exposed to the idea that education is a privilege, that not all children get to go to school. But I think when you're a school child here in America, you assume education is guaranteed for everybody. It doesn't seem all that precious. But I wanted the children here to understand that children in Pakistan often just go to work and never go to school. We did a couple of school drives with our PTA and teachers. We sent some school supplies one year to Sabawoon. Another year, each class picked their favorite book, and that was sent to the children there. The children there study English. And so we felt that this was a project that had benefit for both schools. I worked with Samina and her husband to build a website for Sabawoon so families could learn about it. And then at that time, so originally the school was in a rented building, but they did a lot of fundraising and they bought a piece of property and we're going to build a purpose-built school. And Samina had recently been in Pakistan. She had some wonderful photos to share. And so we worked with the PTA to set up a school assembly. She was going to show pictures to the children, and then afterward we were going to go outside in the playground and have a taped outline of the new Sabawoon school building that was going to be constructed so the kids could see the size of this school. And we were asking them to bring quarters, and they could put a quarter down on the tape and make a little donation. We also had kite flyers coming, a group of kind of professional kite flyers in Chicago, because we know that's a big pastime in Pakistan and Afghanistan. But 2 days before the assembly, I got a phone call from the school principal, and she said, I really need you to come in and talk with me. She said, I've had a couple of staff members tell me they will not come to school on the day of the assembly because they're so opposed to supporting a school in Pakistan. They have family members in the military, and they don't want to be part of this project. And she said, I don't feel that we can proceed. We're going to have to cancel the assembly. I went home and I talked with my family. My husband said, don't they realize this is how we avoid war in the next generation? Our children know their children. Our children care about their children. We have a relationship with them. Well, then I had to call Samina and tell her that we were having to cancel the assembly. And I was, as you can imagine, angry, embarrassed. My heart was in my throat when I phoned her. But Samina, I think with her knowledge of human nature as a psychiatrist, she's lived in many countries, she said to me, well then, the people here are just like the people there. They fear what they don't know. And that was her big-hearted way of, kind of processing this with me. My family has continued to support Sabawoon with financial donations, but that really was the end of the project with my children's school. And I think it's something I'm still working through. It's a painful experience, and I thought the chance to share it with you would be helpful in some ways. Sometimes things go well, and sometimes things don't. And it, even when we put a lot of effort in, it doesn't always reap the end result that we're after. Well, Act 3 is about the trip I took in 2021 with Samina and her family. I think for a lot of us, Afghanistan and Pakistan came onto our radar when the events of September 11 happened. But this is a very old part of the world. Northern Pakistan, Afghanistan, the Silk Road, the history of the exchange of trade goods and ideas and religions that has taken place in that part of the world for thousands of years. Tamim Ansary, whose book I read from, calls it the middle world. It's a place of real connection. It's also a place that's experienced a lot of invasion and that's had to exhibit a lot of resilience. This is a place in Peshawar where you can have a photo taken, and between the words Peshawar and forever is a seat with a lotus. And that's meant to be a symbol of rebirth for the city of Peshawar, which has had to kind of recreate itself over and over again, even recently absorbing so many Afghani refugees and becoming much more conservative there. Samina told me growing up she wouldn't have had to wear any headscarf in public, but she said that's become very much the mood of that part of the world. And so she said you kind of adapt to changing realities. Security was a real concern. I just included a couple of photos. If we were outside of the immediate area where they lived, we did have armed guards with us, so it's not a place that's easy for an American to visit. I only went because her family was hosting me, and they made it very easy for me to be there. I have traveled a lot in my life. I've traveled on my own and with friends and with organized tour groups. I've lived and worked overseas. But this is the first time I was the guest of someone in another part of the world. And if any of you have had that experience, it was transformative for me. I mean, this really was an amazing travel experience, to be so far from home and yet feel so comfortable and welcomed. This is the extended family with whom I stayed. We were there for her niece Malala's wedding, and Malala is seated in the middle. There are 5 women on the sofa there. Malala is in the center. The name Malala is a common name there, and it means a woman who is fierce and strong. When I arrived at each of her brothers' homes, Kazim and Mirvez, I thanked each of them when I got there and said, thank you so much for having me in your home. Their immediate response was, but this is your home. No thanks are needed, which really set the tone and taught me a lot about hospitality. I got to witness family ties up close. This is Malala and her grandmother. We had many nights with poetry readings and music and dancing. The young people were practicing Bollywood routines to do at the wedding, so that was a lot of fun. Late nights in pajamas and getting pizza at 2 a.m. But they made a point of saying, we really love our elders. We really respect our elders, and I saw that. When young people entered a room, they stopped individually, each adult, to say hello. There was such a sense of respect and real admiration for older people. I think, in America we emphasize our rights a lot. What am I entitled to? But in Pakistan I saw far more of an emphasis on responsibilities and what do I owe others. The wedding itself was just a beautiful occasion. There were 3 nights of wedding celebration. Also a couple of other parties on the right. Malala's coming in. This was her dolki party, sort of like a shower, but a lot more fun, I would say. And the picture that I showed you of Samina at the beginning, that was her at the dolki. And I think that picture just so captures her warmth and beauty, the spirit that is Samina. Here we are at the wedding, and we had henna done. The jewelry and the clothing was just a feast for me, a sensory feast. Malala was seated for a part of the first evening up on a dais by herself. You can see her head is covered. This is an arranged marriage, and that's still fairly typical in Pakistan. She had right of refusal, and she had refused some other prospective suitors. You see her seated here in the center with some friends and family members. The 2 women on her right are good friends of hers. They're all dentists. So they're all professional, accomplished young women. Her husband, she married a man who's a surgeon. And so again, this family that really values education and hard work. We got to visit Sabawoon while I was there, and I got to see this school building that had been constructed. This was a real pinnacle moment for me on the trip. Today there are about 250 students. Most of them are girls. It's become in the community something that parents seek out. Instead of having to persuade parents, the reputation of the school is very strong. Parents appreciate how this does give their children a different set of opportunities in life. Most of these students are girls, and they're considering making the school all girls because the community feels better about all girls schools and all boys schools. Right now, the boys who attend are only elementary age. I should mention, too, about 10% of the children are orphans who attend Sabawoon. The curriculum is taught in Urdu, which is the national language, also in Arabic and in English. English, they feel, is very important because they want these children to have marketable skills in a global work environment. And when we were there, we attended a biology class, and one of the students gave a detailed explanation of endo and exocytosis in English. I was blown away. I don't speak one other language fluently, never mind 4. And so it was really impressive to see these children, already at ages 8, 9, 10, speaking 4 languages because they all speak something else at home. When we asked what they wanted to do in their adult life, we heard about being doctors and teachers and engineers, pilots, joining the military, really big aspirations. The boy on the right is writing on a whiteboard. They've recently added some whiteboards to the classrooms, and they're now working on adding a science lab. I met a couple of their really high-flying students who are going on to college, and then here's the faculty for Sabawoon. And now they're working on building a college that will be part of their campus. So children who finish the program and want to go on can do that right there at Sabawoon. I included this photo. I was inspired last week. I attended Connie and Bill's talk, and portraits. I didn't take this picture. Most of the pictures I took. This one was taken by a friend. I just think this little girl looks like a Vermeer painting to me. The light coming in on the side of her face. She's sort of caught in a quiet moment. But it was really just a joy to be able to visit this school and to see 250 students, all of whom are learning and just changing the whole trajectory of their lives. I'd like to read this again from the Invention of yesterday. The goal is not for all of us to become just the same, nor to educate them so they can join with us, nor to become just like them so we can join their world. The goal is for all of us to find our way around the world with the same map. Only then will all discussions make sense. Only then will all conversations become possible. It takes a lot of intellectual craning and neck stretching to picture the world from another center. But there's no other way to build a world community in which everyone is us and nobody is them. So some things that I've learned, and you saw this at the beginning, but again, just to recap, hospitality can be a wonderful way to connect with others. I know many of you have worked with Afghani refugee families here in this community. That's certainly one way that we as a church community can be involved in using hospitality. Recognizing these real differences between our cultures, but also recognizing those powerful similarities, fear of the unknown, our suspicion of outsiders, our commitment to education, and love for our children. And again, thinking about zakat as a way to model compassion in the world. And then just some ideas for going forward, things I wanted to leave with you today. I hope this is an ongoing conversation. I think, to see past headlines, I think we see a word like Pakistan and some images come into our minds that may or may not be very accurate. But getting to know people on an individual, family level, a community level, challenging ourselves not to sit with people who look just like us. And Carol Koister said this to me recently, experiencing what it's like to be a minority. It's a valuable experience. Seek that out. And then finally, keep learning and keep trying. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. What a privilege to hear about that lovely relationship and all the learnings, and I feel like we had a exercise in international relations. So thank you for that. Next Sunday, our guest speaker will be Barry Johnson, one of my heroes. He's the founder of Polarity Management, and we did a workshop a few months back on polarity management and learned how much of life is about not a problem to solve, but a polarity to manage. Talked with Barry this week, and I think you'll be very excited to hear his presentation. Our blessing this morning comes from Valerie Cower once again. I'm sorry, it's not Valerie Cower. It's a Sikh writer she quotes in her book. I have forgotten my envy of others since I found my sacred company. I see no enemy. I see no stranger. All of us belong to each other. What the divine does, I accept as good. I have received this wisdom from the holy. The one pervades all. Gazing upon the one, beholding the one, love blossoms forth in happiness. I have forgotten my envy of others because you are part of me I do not yet know. People, go in peace.